Hey, I'm Sam, and it's Sunday morning, and extremely cold here now. Um, so I did intend to take some time away and try and give my attention to other things that I've got going on in my life, but this whole thing, this journey I'm sharing is 24/7, and most of the time I feel like I'm a passenger, and I couldn't pause it even if I wanted to. To go back is impossible. To go back to the delusion of self-centeredness and to live my life solely for myself just seems impossible. So I feel like a little bit like I'm in a kind of no man's land at the moment. And all I need to do really each day is just to try and be sensitive to the offering that I have every day of where that pathway is going. Every time I try and impose my will in a way that is self-serving, I think it's just a habitual expression of what motivated me for years of, all my life, and that is fear, the need for control, the need for safety, and it's self-protection as well. So it just doesn't work anymore, and everything that I've done my whole life, the person I've been, just causes me pain now when I habitually sort of drift back into old habits of thinking and behaving. So I don't really know why this has happened to me, why I'm being forced, kicking and screaming, to surrender. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm the one that invited this process to begin by asking the questions I did. I think most people just don't want to look at their pain. They don't want to look at their pain. So they don't want to ask themselves difficult questions about how they cope with that pain, how they move through the world. Everything we say and do has consequences in our life and others. Maybe because of the life I led, deeply traumatized. And I'm beginning to see that more and more now, actually, as I gain clarity and I become more present. I can see more clearly into the past and how traumatized I was and how normalized it all became. So maybe the reason that I'm going through this now is because of the devastation I left in my wake as I crashed through life, doing everything I could not to feel the pain I carried. Caused devastation to myself and plenty of other people. And I think I just got to a point where the pain got so great I couldn't take it anymore. And I think the most difficult aspect of this journey is surrender. I think if you're traumatized as a child, many people are. It's all I knew. I was born into trauma, and I don't have any memories before pain. So you have to build a citadel of self-protection within which you exist. The environment just is too much, it's too confusing, so you just retreat. And that citadel of self-protection becomes a rigid defense structure that only really serves to isolate you further. But for me to let go of that is very difficult. But it's one and the same, that citadel, it's one and the same with egoic identity. It's the same thing. So every time there's an attack on that citadel, or a threat, the defences come up. And it literally has felt, in the past when I've experienced that, it's felt like life or death. And it's I think of it this way, that when you experience extreme fear as a child, you're kind of set into this expectation that every threat is a life or death threat. And so as I kind of moved through life, I literally could not exist in anything but those desperate situations where I felt like my life was in danger, because it's the only thing that made sense of me. My thinking was shaped by that kind of fear when I was a child, so I didn't know how to make sense of the world unless I was living in desperate, terrifying situations where every decision felt like life or death, right or wrong. And the complexity and nuance of life was completely lost. I couldn't see it, I couldn't feel it, I couldn't experience it. I lived at the extremes, either despair or rage or excitement, or numbness in between, brought on by medicating my pain away with drugs. So to become present is to feel the nuance, is to allow myself to be wrong. To be gentle, to not take every threat as a life or death situation. But it's so difficult, and I find myself bumping up now against the structures of my own mind. I'm in my early 50s. Those structures are very rigid. So healing is a physical thing. I think the body just remembers everything, and it learns to kind of build structures in our own minds and in our physicality that protect us from the pain and allow us to actually function. But to learn how to function in a situation that is not threatening, it's taking a long time. I think that, when I transitioned, I think that was just another strategy to find protection and to mould myself into something that was more acceptable and easier to be around. But all I did was just go further into delusion. And it's very difficult now to kind of be on this journey of coming into the body, because the body is where we are. And for me to feel like my body feels so strange now, feels very incongruous. So I think it's a strange thing that I did to myself with all the surgery I had, I mutilated my body. And it was just a thing. It wasn't me. And to actually begin to heal my body and to say, no, this is me. It's like learning all over again a connection with my own physicality. And I'm not even sure whether I've ever had that. Whether I've ever been here, truly been here. Incarnate here in my body. I don't think I have. I've lived in my mind my whole life. But I think that's what we do when we disassociate, because life is so painful when you experience childhood trauma, physical and emotional pain. We live in the citadel of our own imagination. And I remember this actually. I was writing yesterday, and I think one of the toughest changes I've gone through is dissolving the imaginary hope for a saviour. Like someone was going to reach into my life and make everything okay and rescue me from the pain. And I lived in hope. And it's not going to happen. We must save ourselves. I remember when I was heavily using drugs, I would go through the same scenario where I'd just get to the point of collapse, and where I simply was so exhausted I couldn't go on, and I would just collapse, and I'd lie there and dehydrated, exhausted, and I'd just weep. Burning tears of salt, and they would burn my eyes, and I would just weep and pray for someone to save me. But I think that, in some way I still have hope. But it's not the same. It's not the delusional hope of fantasy. And I think there is a power that we can accept into our lives that is loving and does save us, really, but we have to rise up and meet it. We have to meet it. We have to ask for help. And so for me, the longest journey was to ask for help. And I had to reach absolute despair. I had nothing left. Nothing. No internal resources to get through the next minute before I asked for help. I knelt on this floor a year ago. And I realised that I had nothing left. And I hated myself. because I knew that for me to not feel the pain, I would need to be someone else. And I hated myself, and I just started to punch myself in the face. I completely forgot about the metal plates I've got in my head here, where they rehung my forehead. I forgot that I've had my brow ridge detached and re-cemented, and I just punched myself over and over and over in my face till I was black and blue, because I hated myself, because I was in the way of my own freedom, my attachment to that defining pain that I could not let go, because it was me. And there was a knock at the door, and an elderly lady from the village who delivers food for people in need asked if I needed anything, and I couldn't speak to her because she'd had no concept of the magnitude of her question. Do I need anything? What do I need? Love. Hope. Real hope. Not the hope of fantasy. A lifeline. But I just said nothing. And she just said, I pray for you. And that I can ask for help if I need it. And I just closed the door. And I went and sat in the kitchen. And for the first time in my life, I sincerely prayed. I said, help me. Help me. And I think that moment was the moment of change for me, because I acknowledged that I can't do this alone, and that I lived my life in that citadel of self-protection, trying to find everything that I needed within myself or in a world that I saw as a resource, and I couldn't do it alone. And admitting that, I opened. And I think that is the moment of change, because I think we are created. We are created. And we live in union with that Creator. But if we can't acknowledge that, and we live a self-centered life, trying to find our own protection and feed our selfish desires and assuage our fears, we can't be reached. And when we open and we say, I surrender, help me, it's the beginning. It's not a moment, it's not an event, it's a process, daily process of change. And that's when life begins, and when the journey towards the self discovered in union with God begins, I think. So that's what's happening to me. A letting go, a dismantling of the citadel, and a discovery of a self that lives in God. But it's a painful journey, because I'm in my 50s and I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and I need to forgive. I need to forgive myself. I need to feel the pain that kept me from actually inhabiting my body, and let it go. And it takes time and it's difficult. But Here I am. I'm going to read a poem. If I can see. Got a little light here. So, this is from David Whyte's latest book of poetry. And this is the edge you carry with you. What is this beguiling reluctance to be happy? This quickness in turning away the moment you might arrive? The felt sense that a moment's unguarded joy might after all just kill you? You know so very well the edge of darkness you have always carried with you. You know so very well your childhood legacy, a particular inherited sense of hurt, given to you so freely by the world you entered. And you know too well by now the body's hesitation at the invitation to undo everything others seem to want to make you learn. But your edge of darkness has always made its own definition secretly as an edge of light. And the door you closed might, by its very nature, be one just waiting to be leant against and opened. And happiness might just be a single step away, on the other side of that next unhelpful and undeserving thought. Your way home, understood now, not as an achievement, but as a giving up, a blessed undoing. An arrival in the body and a full rest in the give and take of the breath. This living, breathing body, always waiting to greet you at the door. Always, no matter the long years you've been away, still wanting you to come home. Oh, sorry. I'll read that again. What is this beguiling reluctance to be happy? This quickness in turning away the moment you might arrive? The felt sense that a moment's unguarded joy might after all just kill you? You know so very well the edge of darkness you have always carried with you. You know so very well your childhood legacy, that particular inherited sense of hurt given to you so freely by the world you entered. And you know too well by now the body's hesitation at the invitation to undo everything others seem to want to make you learn. But your edge of darkness has always made its own definition secretly as an edge of light. And the door you closed might by its very nature be one just waiting to be leant against and opened. And happiness might just be a single step away on the other side of that next unhelpful and undeserving thought. Your way home, understood now, not as an achievement, but as a giving up. A blessed undoing, an arrival in the body and a full rest in the give and take of the breath. This living, breathing body, always waiting to greet you at the door. Always, no matter the long years you've been away, still wanting you to come home. Oh, sorry. You know, we have to be here to feel, to experience intimate, vital, presence of what's available to us to live, to really live, we have to feel. We have to feel. And, it's difficult because feeling means feeling sorrow. That's what we don't want to feel. The Germans have a word, Weltschmerz, which means world pain, the sorrow of the world. And I think our avoidance of that sorrow perpetuates it further. So just as those that wounded me so thoroughly were only able to do that because they were unable to feel their own pain, and thus it goes down through the generations. So we have to face our fear, we have to face our pain, we have to feel it and let it go piece by piece, and then we can show up. And so for me, part of that process is living in union with God, not with self as the centre of my world, but with God. And there, every resource we need is found. So, I'm trying. But I am truthfully just at the beginning of my journey. I've spent the last 2 years on this channel finding the edges of that self, finding the walls of that citadel. And so this is the beginning for me, really. So I'm going to end with another poem. This is Rilke from the Book of Hours. It's Anita Burroughs and Joanna Macy translations from the German. Love poems to God. God speaks to each of us as he makes us, then walks with us silently out of the night. These are the words we dimly hear. You, sent out beyond your recall, go to the limits of your longing, embody me. Flare up like flame, and make big shadows I can move in. Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. No feeling is final. Don't let yourself lose me. Nearby is the country they call life. You will know it by its seriousness. Give me your hand. I don't think I can say any more. I'll just waffle, and so I'll leave it there. And I'll see you in the next video.